What is aggravated burglary in Victoria? An aggravated burglary, as it sounds, is a burglary that's aggravated by some factor. And that factor might be a burglary with intent to assault somebody, or it could be a burglary where you're armed with a weapon when you go in to commit the burglary. Another type of aggravated burglary is one where you're reckless as to whether somebody is in the house at the time. So each of them has a different way of getting to finding of guilt, and say with the recklessness as to somebody being in a house, that's obviously generally a far less serious offence than when somebody kicks in the door and they've got a shotgun. For obvious reasons, most offences have a gradation. It is, however, an offence that carries a maximum penalty of 25 years. And so it's a really serious offence, and one that you've got to take very seriously if you've been charged with it. If you're being sentenced in the county court, normally the court's starting point is jail, without question. If it's a reckless aggravated burglary, the person possibly being in the house, they're generally heard in the magistrate's court, and then the penalty turns more on your circumstances and the circumstances of the offence. Another point I'd make about it is the elements of an aggravated burglary. As I was saying just before, it is that there is a burglary, so there's an entry into a premises where you don't have a right to be there, and then there's the element of aggravation, which is the possession of a weapon or the intent to assault somebody. People often struggle with the weapon issue because, say, they might have a screwdriver on them and there was never an intention for that to be a weapon. Under the law, it could be a weapon because the Court of Appeal, in their wisdom, decided that a plastic bottle is a weapon for the purposes of deciding if something's an armed robbery. So many things can be a weapon. Really depends on what the person's intent was who had the object. And so that's something you would discuss with your lawyers. Another point would be that you don't have to have the intention to use the weapon. So that screwdriver, you don't have to have an intention to stab somebody with it. If it's decided it was there because it was a weapon and not because you were trying to fix the hinges on the door, then that will be enough for you to be found guilty of an aggravated burglary. It's also the same with derivative offending, or the offending of a group of people, that as joint offenders you will be held liable for an aggravated burglary even if you don't have a weapon, if another one of your party has a weapon. Obviously, there are a lot of defences to aggravated burglary. The first one is just a factual dispute. Did what the police say happen? The second one might be what your intent is, or that you never realised that somebody had a knife tucked away in their pocket. You had no reason to realise that. They've always been a nice person, didn't expect it at all. That would be a defence if they were trying to get you for derivative offending. Or another thing might be that it's not a burglary because the person consented. So that often in these cases you see an argument about what happened at the door. Because if the person said, "Oh, you're here, come in," and then something happens inside, you haven't actually entered unlawfully. You've been asked into the premises. And often that can be quite unclear. You may be completely convinced that you were allowed to be there, and so what happens to you should reflect what your intent was. The final thing that I'd say about aggravated burglary is that sentencing factors are really wide. The person who believes that they have a right to get something off someone, even if misguided and a strange circumstance ends up with an aggravated burglary where no one's hurt, is of course different from the example of the person who arrives with a gun, kicks in the door and shoots somebody. So people always ask, what is the outcome going to be? What is the sentence going to be? We can't say to you it will be this many years or that many years. What we can say is, look, this is low, medium, high range. This is the sort of sentence you might get. These are the things we should do to reduce your sentence if you're found guilty. But the primary thing is, can we defend it? Is it actually an aggravated burglary? Because the best outcome is always not being found guilty of something, obviously. The reality is most things in the court resolve as pleas of guilty, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue your right to defend something.